I'm 60 years old, and I want to tell you about three vegetables that have quietly changed my health, from my gut, sleep, memory, to my energy, in ways I never expected. And no, I'm not talking about leafy greens. Before discovering this, I thought my diet was pretty decent. I ate vegetables daily, drank enough water, limited sugar, and barely touched fast food. Yet, when I turned 58, my body began to protest. I didn't eat much, but still felt bloated, like food just sat there and refused to digest. I slept restlessly, often waking in the middle of the night. And what worried me most was my memory starting to slip. I'd walk into the kitchen, open the fridge, and just stand there, unable to remember what I was looking for. I used to think it was just aging, or maybe the result of years of stress. But the more it went on, the more scared I became. If I didn't do something soon, in 5, 10 years, I might end up relying on medication, hospitals, or becoming a burden to my children. And I didn't want to end my life that way. So I started researching. I read books, listened to podcasts, watched dozens of videos by doctors, nutritionists, and even older people who had regained their health without medication. Through that process, I discovered something fascinating. Three types of vegetables, incredibly easy to find, cheap, but often overlooked, turned out to be the key to transforming my digestion, sleep, and overall health. The first one that surprised me the most, okra, the vegetable I used to avoid like the plague. I used to hate okra. It's slimy, gooey, with an unappealing taste. When I was young, my mother often boiled okra, and every time I just wanted to skip the meal. But one morning, when I complained to my doctor about constant bloating, post-meal fatigue, and always craving snacks, he simply smiled and asked, "Do you eat soluble fiber, especially from okra?" I looked at him wide-eyed. "That slimy stuff is actually useful?" Then the doctor explained. Turns out, the bacteria in our gut, especially the good bacteria, can influence hunger, sleep, and even mood. If they're fed properly, they'll send signals to the brain. That's enough. You don't need more food. On the contrary, if you feed them what they don't like too much sugar, refined starches, and processed food, they'll fight back. The result, you constantly feel hungry, bloated, and tired after meals. And okra, with its exceptionally high amount of soluble fiber, happens to be the favorite food of beneficial bacteria. It helps me stay full longer, reduces sugar cravings, stabilizes blood sugar, and improves sleep quality. Additionally, okra can absorb lectins, a type of inflammatory protein found in many processed foods. Lectins stick to the intestinal walls, cause low-grade inflammation, leaky gut, and affect the immune system. But thanks to okra, lectins are soaked up like a sponge and flushed out. Another bonus, okra is a natural prebiotic, food for good bacteria. Without prebiotics, probiotics can't survive. And without probiotics, your digestive system is essentially bankrupt. I started eating okra daily, but not the slimy boiled version from the past. I sliced each pod in half, drizzled some olive oil, sprinkled salt, pepper, and a bit of garlic powder, then roasted them at 400 degrees fries for about 10 minutes on each side. The okra turned slightly crispy, nutty, and wasn't slimy at all. Even better than French fries. After just 2 weeks, I slept more soundly. My belly no longer felt bloated, and I stopped raiding the fridge for cookies or chocolate in the middle of the night. If you're over 50, often feel tired despite getting enough sleep, feel bloated after meals, or experience fake hunger, chances are the problem isn't that you're eating too much, but that your gut bacteria are crying for help. And okra might be the simplest way to start healing. I used to think that being healthy required taking lots of vitamins, following a keto diet, or exercising like crazy. But really, sometimes just a small change, like swapping your afternoon snack for roasted okra, is enough for the body to reset itself. The second vegetable, well, actually, it's not a vegetable, it's mushrooms. I never paid much attention to mushrooms. To me, they were just something to stir fry with beef or toss on a pizza. I never imagined mushrooms could affect my sleep, memory, or even my immune system. Until one day, I listened to a podcast by Dr. Andrew Weil, an integrative medicine expert, and he said, "One of the most miraculous things in the plant world doesn't come from leaves or roots, but from mushrooms, especially lion's mane, shiitake, and maitake mushrooms." I was intrigued, so I began researching. Turns out mushrooms don't just contain B vitamins, which help with energy metabolism, but also special compounds called beta-glucans, which activate the immune system, reduce inflammation, and support the function of nerve cells. But what truly amazed me was lion's mane, a mushroom that looks like a fluffy white pom-pom, can stimulate the growth of NGF, nerve growth factor, a factor that nourishes and regenerates nerve cells. Basically, it's like fertilizer for your brain. I remember at the time I was really worried about my memory, forgetting people's names, mixing up appointments, and sometimes feeling like my brain was foggy. I tried taking lion's mane capsules for 2 weeks and incorporated other mushrooms like shiitake and white button mushrooms into my meals. I stir fried them with shallots and olive oil, served with brown rice and boiled greens. I'm not saying my memory became superhuman like when I was young, but clearly I started feeling more alert. I woke up without that brain made of stone feeling. I remembered my grocery list without needing to write it down. And more importantly, I felt more confident in myself. An interesting thing is, even though mushrooms are low in calories, they provide a great feeling of satiety. Thanks to that, I no longer craved bread or sweets when stressed. Whenever I felt off, instead of reaching for snacks, I'd roast some mushrooms with plant-based butter, sprinkle with a few cashews. Tasty, comforting, and healthy. What I realized is, we don't need extreme solutions. No strict diets, no calorie counting. Sometimes, simply introducing living ingredients like mushrooms is enough to awaken your body's self-healing system. And now, let me tell you about the final vegetable, one you might be surprised by. Bitter herb, raudang. I grew up in southern Vietnam, where bitter herb often appears in fish soup or served with fermented fish hot pot. But to be honest, I hated its taste as a child. Bitter, pungent, not easy to swallow. Until I read a study from Mahidol University in Thailand, where researchers found that extracts from bitter herb, scientific name Bacopa monnieri, improve memory, increase concentration, and have powerful antioxidant effects. I didn't believe it at first. That bitter weed can help the brain? But then I remembered, my grandfather, who was nearly 90, was still sharp, still reading without glasses, and he loved eating bitter herb soup. I decided to try. Not the traditional soup way, but I started mixing young bitter herb leaves into shrimp salad or juicing it with apples and lemon. The bitterness softened and the feeling afterward was strange. Not a caffeine buzz, but a calm clarity. My mind was lighter and less chaotic. I kept that up for about 3 weeks. Every morning I drank a small glass of bitter herb juice mixed with cucumber and celery. And at night, instead of wine or coffee, I brewed a warm bitter herb tea. What was the result? I slept better, but more notably, I became less anxious, less stuck in my head, less irrational fear. Some days I looked at myself in the mirror and thought, turns out I'm still alive, still capable of change, still able to start over, even at 60. Bitter herb, it turns out, isn't just a vegetable. It's a reminder, sometimes bitterness is what we need to wake up. 3 vegetables, okra, mushrooms, and bitter herb, might not be on any glamorous superfood list. But to me, they are 3 quiet companions that help me escape the spiral of fatigue, digestive issues, insomnia, and memory fog. I share this not to make you change your diet overnight, but to help you start listening to your body again. Try asking, what do I really need today? Not just what's tasty, but what makes your body healthier, calmer, and more alive. If I can change from being sluggish, forgetful, and sleepless to being alert, well-rested, and full of life, then I believe you can too. Start with something small, a roasted okra, a plate of stir-fried mushrooms, a morning glass of bitter herb juice, and then your body will tell you you're on the right track. If you found this story helpful, leave a comment or share it with someone who needs it. And don't forget, age is not the end. It's the chance to live more deeply.